Så velkommen til kriminologistudier i utlandet. Jeg heter Margrethe, og jeg jobber for Sonor. Sammen med oss har vi Richard Wilde, som jobber for University of Greenwich. Og så skulle vi egentlig ha Griffith University med oss i dag, men hun har dessverre blitt syk. Så vi er i den situasjonen hvor jeg vil holde den presentasjonen, og så håper jeg at det kommer til å gå ganske bra. Planen for webinaret er at det tar ca. 1 time fra starten av når jeg snakker nå, og så vil det være muligheter til å stille spørsmål etterpå. Det er en chat-funksjon her som dere kan se etter, og der kan dere da skrive spørsmål til meg, hvis dere har noen om kriminologistudier. Har dere spørsmål direkte til universitetene, send de også gjerne til meg, men skriv de da på engelsk, så jeg slipper å måtte oversette direkte. Så planen er, hvem er Sonor, og hvorfor skal du få hjelp av oss? Hva er kriminologi? Så vil Richard snakke om kriminologi ved sitt universitet i Storbritannia. Så vil jeg da snakke om kriminologi ved Griffith University i Australia. Og så vil jeg snakke litt videre om hva du kan gjøre med en kriminologigrad i utlandet, før vi da åpner opp for spørsmål. Så Sonor er jo da et akronym for Study Outside Norway, og det er jo akkurat det vi holder på med. Vi hjelper dere med å søke studier i utlandet ved våre partnerinstitusjoner. Vi som jobber i Sonor har alle studert i utlandet selv. Mine kolleger har stort sett studert i engelskspråklige land slik som Australia, USA og Storbritannia, mens jeg derimot har da studert i blant annet Tyskland, Kina og Taiwan. Vi har da et kontor i Trondheim og et kontor i Oslo, og jeg jobber da i Oslo-kontoret. Vi har over 60 ulike samarbeidsuniversiteter, og ved disse samarbeidsuniversitetene kan du studere flere 100 forskjellige grader med flere 1000 forskjellige fag. Så hvis du ikke klarer å finne noe der, så skal det godt gjøres å finne det riktige studiet. Fordelen med å få hjelp av oss er at vi er kjempegode på jobben vår. Vi kjenner våre partneruniversiteter ut og inn, og det er helt gratis og helt uforpliktende å få hjelp fra oss. Du vil bli tildelt en personlig veileder. Mest sannsynlig har du fått en mail fra den personen allerede. Hvis ikke, så vil du bli tildelt en senere i dag. Og vi vil hjelpe deg med å velge riktig universitet for deg, hvilken riktig grad for deg, vi vil hjelpe deg med søknaden din, og så vil vi da se om vi finner de beste stipendene for deg, og så har vi masse tips og triks til å søke lånekassa, blant annet. Er du nysgjerrig på hva tidligere og nåværende utenlandsstudenter synes om å studere i utlandet, så har vi en side som heter Hva sier studentene? Så hvis du går på sonor.no, så er det øverst i høyre hjørne, så er det sånne 3 streker. Så du klikker på de 3 strekene, så er det et eget punkt som sier Hva sier studentene? Der kan du klikke deg gjennom til de forskjellige landene, og så kan du se om du finner det universitetet du er mest interessert i. Og så er det jo det store spørsmålet i disse dager, hva gjør vi med korona? Per nå så er det mulig å reise til blant annet Storbritannia, Singapore, USA og EU-land, mens det er stengte grenser i blant annet Australia og New Zealand. Hvis du ønsker å starte på studier der, særlig for dere som er interessert i mars-oppstart, så er det 2 alternativer for dere. Enten så er det å utsette studiestarten til for eksempel juli, eller så går det an å starte studiene dine online, og når da grensene åpner, så kan du reise inn til enten New Zealand eller Australia. Så da starter vi med det dere er mest interessert i. Hva er kriminologi? Så kriminologi handler om hvorfor noen bryter loven, og hva vi kan gjøre for å forhindre at folk bryter loven. Kriminologi er kanskje et av de mest populære studiene vi har i Norge, og det setter søkelys på de forskjellige faktorene som leder folk inn i kriminalitet. Så her vil du lære om kriminalitet, kontroll og samfunn. Du vil få kunnskap om de grunnleggende sidene ved de registrerte kriminalitetsbildet. Du er veldig opptatt av statistikk i kriminologene, og kontrollsystemets virkemåter i det landet du studerer. Så det betyr rett og slett hvordan da staten responderer på en kriminell handling. Du vil også bli kjent med ulike historiske og teoretiske perspektiver om kriminologi, og hvorfor folk begår kriminalitet. Du vil jo komme borti ganske mange dilemmaer som kriminologistudent, blant annet migrasjon og migrasjonskontroll, marginalisering, ulikhet i samfunnet og årsaken og bekjempelsen av kriminalitet og andre former for skade. Så en bachelor i kriminologi vil jo gi deg kunnskap om utviklingen av kriminalitet i samfunnet, ulike straffemetoder blant annet, og begrunnelse for hvorfor man velger en straffemetode over en annen straffemetode. Det største kravet til deg som er interessert i å studere kriminologi og velge kriminologistudier, er at du må faktisk være litt interessert i mennesker. Studiet bygger jo på å bli kjent med menneskets natur, både på godt og vondt. Og så i tillegg så er det en stor fordel å være samfunnsengasjert. For jobben du gjør er jo direkte påvirket av samfunnet rundt deg. Og jobben du gjør vil jo påvirke samfunnet rundt deg også. Så mange kriminologer deltar derfor aktivt i det offentlige ordskiftet i Norge om blant annet straffenivå på forskjellige typer forbrytelser. Så en dyktig kriminolog er også ansvarsbevisst og klarer å sette seg inn i andres situasjon. Så her er det å balansere empati for den du jobber med, samtidig at du klarer å holde deg litt objektiv. Det er kanskje litt dumt å si, men du bør ikke være redd for kriminelle hvis du er interessert i å studere dette her. Og det er også en fordel hvis du tror på at mennesker faktisk kan endre seg. I Norge så kan man kun studere kriminologi på Universitetet i Oslo, og det er rekordhøye opptakskrav. Til sammen er det 72 plasser på Universitetet i Oslo for årsstudium og bachelorgrad, og i 2020 så var det 11 000 som søkte på de 72 plassene. Så litt sånn enkel matematikk så gjør det jo det at snittkravet er ganske høyt. Jeg ser at de som kommer rett fra videregående så var det vel 5,3 i rent snitt for å komme inn. Men velger man å studere blant annet i utlandet, så er kravene mye lavere med en gang. Dette er fordi at kriminologi er et mye mer vanlig studium som tilbys ved mange flere universiteter. Da går kravene ned, selv om kvaliteten ikke er noe lavere enn den vi er vant med fra i Norge blant annet. Så i dag så har vi med oss Richard, som da skal snakke om kriminologi ved Greenwich University i London. Richard, do you want to share your screen?
Sure. Is my sound working?
Yes, your camera is working and we can hear you perfectly well.
So I'll assume you can see what I'm seeing, unless I hear differently, and I look forward to hearing questions afterwards. I've got loads of slides, but I'm going to whiz through them as fast as is intelligible to leave as much time for questions as possible, because that's the most interesting bit for me. So let me just go through this. So I'm Richard Wild, and I run these two master's programs at Greenwich, the MA International Criminology and the MSc Criminology and Criminal Psychology. And then I'm part of the criminology team that delivers also a number of undergraduate programs, which I'll tell you about. So that's Greenwich. I took this photo, or I used this photo before the pandemic, although I think this photo kind of captures coronavirus somehow. But anyway, it's a World Heritage Site, which means that it's a tourist site along with the Great Pyramids of Giza and the Hoover Dam and things like that. So it's well worth visiting, even if you don't choose to come and study with us. And it's been used in a number of films. So for a previous talk, I just picked out some of the films that have been shot partly on the Greenwich University campus. So hopefully there'll be some films there that you recognise, Duchess or Tomb Raider or Skyfall. Basically any film where there's a need to show some kind of historic parts of London, they quite often use Greenwich to double up as 10 Downing Street or as parts of the House of Parliament or something like that. And it can be quite annoying. I remember one time I had no students turn up for a class, and then finally one student wandered in, and I said, what's going on? And she said, well, Johnny Depp's on campus. I went, oh, okay, fair enough. Oh, okay. So these are the programs that we run at Greenwich. So we've got 2 undergraduate programs, a BA Criminology and Criminal Justice and a BSc Criminology and Criminal Psychology, and then 3 master's programs, MA International Criminology, which I've mentioned, and the MSc Criminology and Criminal Psychology. And then we've got a new program which started only last year. So this is its 2nd year running, and it's the MSc Criminology, Gender and Sexualities. We've got a growing number of specialists around feminist criminology and gender in the department, and they have a research group and they set up this master's. So they're doing some really exciting things. The link at the bottom there will take you to the Greenwich website, and then, or you could just search for BA Criminology and Criminal Justice Greenwich, and it will take you straight to the program webpage, where you've got plenty more details on each of the programs. So whatever you're interested in, go and have a look on that. You can click on, I'll tell you in a minute about the program structure and the kind of courses that you might take. But if you go to the program website, you can click on the courses and you can have a look, indicative content, kind of lectures, the kind of assessment, all the details that you might be interested in. So I won't go through that here now. I was asked to say a bit about myself, so I don't want to take up the full 30 minutes just talking about me. I think I added up recently that this is my I've passed my quarter century in criminology, so 25 years, first at Sheffield University, then at Keele University, and then for the last 16 years at Greenwich University. My original training was in psychology and sociology. I did a doctorate in law, and my areas of interest are around policing, human rights, state crime, terrorism, death penalty. These are some research publications, one on the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, which is the equivalent of NATO for Russia, China, and Central Asian states. And then I've done a lot of work around stop and search, that's police stopping people, disproportionately black people. I've stopped doing this, but for 12 years I volunteered for FIDH, Fédération Internationale des Legs des Droits de l'Homme. It's a French, Paris-based human rights. In fact, it's the oldest human rights organization. The other 2 big ones are Amnesty International, based in London, and Human Rights Watch in US, New York. And I worked against the death penalty for them, so I traveled around the world to countries that had the death penalty and did fact-finding missions, visited death row inmates, and wrote reports that went to the UN, EU, and various other bodies to try and encourage people to move away from the death penalty. All of that work is available online if you want to read any of it. Right. I was going to say something briefly about criminology, but I think that you've already had a bit of an introduction about criminology. It's the word obviously comes from crime and ology, the study of or science of. So there we go, the scientific study of crime and criminals, actually everything to do with crime and criminals, so also victims, the criminal justice system, and I'll say a bit more about that. So basically, I consider myself a critical criminologist, or I might even think of myself as an anti-criminologist in a very particular way, or a zemiologist. Zemiology comes from the Greek word for harm, zemos. And so basically what all of that means is that I'm really interested in why people commit crime, but also I'm very interested in why people don't commit crime. And crime is basically occurs here between normative deviance and law breaking. Yeah. So basically, it's things can be morally wrong, and things can also be against the criminal law, and it's where those things interact that is our area of interest. It's made up of a whole load of different subjects as well. You'll probably be aware of this. So criminology is very multidisciplinary, which is one of the reasons that I've stuck with it so long and I find it so interesting, is that I'm doing different things all the time. I'm working with forensic people, I'm working with psychologists, I'm working with in sociology, around social policy, and also law, and plenty of others. So I'm also very much interested in economics, and all of these, and as well as kind of things like chemistry that feeds into forensics. So forensics is often misunderstood. Forensics just means legally applied. So actually, forensics is short for forensic sciences, and there's a whole host of families of disciplines within that. So you can have forensic archaeology, forensic accountancy, forensic pretty much anything, including forensic criminology, interestingly enough, but don't get me started discussing what that is. Psychology, obviously about the individual or small group, so it's about personality, it's about cognition, so what's going on in your brain, it's about function. Sociology is wider, it's about kind of social collectives, groups right all the way up to society. Social policy, you'll be aware of, begins to turn to what we can do about crime in terms of criminology, how we can regulate it, and the obvious best example of that is law. Yeah. Okay, put this slide up just to really speak to some of the more interesting bits of criminology. So it's very disciplinary, it's critical. By critical, I mean that we're interested in power. Yeah. So crime can quite often be an exercise of power, but also responses to crime are exercise of power by the state, by the police, by courts, imprisoning, etc. We have a very much an international perspective on all of our teaching at Greenwich, partly because we draw in a lot of international students, but also many staff have worked around the world and all come from different countries. So very interesting to take that kind of multidisciplinary, international and critical perspective. Crime, criminals, victims, I've already talked about. Some of the kind of subjects which you may want to hear more about. Offender profiling is a very hot topic, but actually it's misunderstood. There's geographical profiling, there's cognitive profiling, there's statistical profiling. There's a whole variety of ways of profiling crime and criminals. Stalking, there's been changes in offending and changes in laws around coercive behaviour, around stalking. Psychopathology is something which I've got a couple of colleagues in our psychology department who work around this. Youth and crime, gangs, street violence were all very topical, still are, pre-coronavirus. Media and film, going back to some of those films I showed you earlier. Prisons, human rights, one of my areas of interest. Gender, got that group of colleagues who works around gender. Race, discrimination, policing, drugs, organised crime, security, terrorism, cybercrime. It goes on and on the list. So that's really just to give you an idea of just how varied and I think interesting criminology as a discipline is. So a bit about Greenwich. We've got over 350 students joining, but actually we've got about 600 students in total if you consider postgraduate and everyone else. And currently we've got 12 academic members of staff, although we've got a new member of staff joining at Christmas, after Christmas, and hopefully some more later in the year. We're all practitioners and ex-practitioners, so there's barristers, solicitors, psychologists. Myself, I work around human rights. We've got probation, ex-probation officers. We did have an ex-police officer, although he's left, but we've got a lot of expertise around that. We've got a colleague who worked in MOPAC, which is the Mayor of London's Office for Policing. We're all active researchers and also qualified teachers in higher education. What's it like to study at Greenwich? In terms of contact hours, I mean, obviously a lot of this has changed under coronavirus. So the majority of teaching is delivered online at the moment, although there are some elements of blended learning, face-to-face, and small, safe classes continue on campus. You'd expect to have about 8 to 12 contact hours a week. These can take part, these could be lectures and seminars, so fairly traditional, or workshops, a whole load of VLE is virtual learning environments, so via Moodle and other online platforms. We also do field trips, court visits, and all kinds of things like that. Assessments vary quite a lot, so especially under coronavirus, there's been a lot of changes in introduction of video recorded assessments, of multiple choice online exams and things. Independent studies, just to remind you that actually classes is not all of your study. In fact, 2/3 of your study will be independent in the library, in study groups, or by yourself. Okay, I'll just make a couple of reflections on these slides because as I said, you can go to the website and click through and have a look at them yourselves. So I'm going to run through the BA Criminology and Criminal Justice program, and then I'll tell you how the other undergraduate program is different. So the first year is introductory. We don't expect anyone to already have any experience with criminology. We'll teach you everything you need to know. So in your first year, you'll do foundations of criminology, foundations of forensics, foundations of sociology, which is understanding deviance, understanding crime and deviance, criminal justice process, which is about courts, policing, how that all works, and professional practice, where we bring in people who work in prisons, police officers, social workers, drug workers, etc., and they talk to you about the work they do. The second year, there are 2 core modules, one which is crime theory, why people commit crime, explanations for that, and criminological research methods, training you how to do your own research. And then you choose from some of these options. Inside Out is a really interesting one because that's taught in the women's prison in London, Her Majesty's Prison Downview, and it's limited to 15 students. So we interview you and it's competitive, and then the lucky 15 students on a Monday morning, we gather on campus, we take them by minibus to the prison, and you're taught in the prison alongside 15 inmates. That's a really interesting module. Penology is the study of prisons and punishment. In your third year, there's only one core module, which is crime in the city, crime in the state, which is local crime, crime in London, street crime, and also global, international crime, organised crime, terrorism, crime against humanity, etc. And then you pick from any of these options. The dissertation research project is really important because you get to pick the topic, and then it's over to you to set up design your own research and carry that out under the guidance and supervision of a member of staff. Placement module is really interesting. The criminology, the community work-based practice. That's again, it's competitive. There are about 30 places a year, and then if you're successful, you're paired with an employer, and you work with them 1 day a week. And it might be a women's refuge, it might be some kind of other victim charity, it might be prisons. Policing, I teach a module on policing. Okay, the BSc Criminology and Criminal Psychology is more or less the same as the BA Criminology, except that there's also a strand of criminal forensic and investigative psychology. And in the first year, you do Introduction to Psychology for Criminology. In the second year, you've got Criminological and Forensic Psychology. And in the third year, there are 2 modules, Social Forensic Psychology, which is about group criminal behaviour, and Investigative Forensic Psychology, which is the kind of psychology that's used by the police in terms of gathering witness statements, interrogation, investigation, but also in prisons in kind of therapeutic interventions. Okay, unless there's anyone, ask me in the questions if you want to know about the master's program. This is the MA International Criminology. This is the MSc Criminology and Criminal Psychology. I teach the crime, terrorism, and the state module. And then this is the MSc Criminology, Gender and Sexualities. Okay, why study at Greenwich? Well, I think the first one is that we really know our students. Yeah, so normally it's an open door policy. I think under coronavirus it's even easier. We all use Teams. My students just drop me messages during the day. We have chats, so staff are really accessible, and not just academic staff, but also the rest of the university. There's lots of support available in terms of academic skills, in terms of library support, in terms of counselling, financial advice, the Students' Union. There are financial support of various sorts. So again, go on our website to hear about bursaries and things. I think I'm right in saying that Criminology had the most satisfied students in London in the last National Student Satisfaction Survey. So we're clearly doing something right. Okay, this slide is meant to represent the other side of studying, which is the social side. I think university is an opportunity to do all kinds of things, follow your dreams, write a book, join all kinds of clubs, join a band, start a band, whatever you can imagine. It's the opportunity to try and do that. And London's a fantastic place to do it. I think, there's the most opportunities anywhere in the country. I won't go on about London. I was born in London, so I could bore you with tales about London. But I think it's probably fair to say pre-Brexit and pre-coronavirus, it was one of the most exciting cities to live in. And where the university is placed, I think is just ideal, because it's actually not really right in the centre of London, but it's on the edge of London, about 20 minutes from the West End. You can go there by boat, by bus, by train. But it also means that it's also about 20 minutes out into Kent, the Kent countryside, down the river, and about an hour from the coast. So it's very, very well placed. Just across the river, there's Canary Wharf and the City of London a bit further. And there's a rich social and cultural life. There's another picture on a slightly sunnier day. These are historic buildings built by Christopher Wren, or some of them were. So the dome, you see the two domes, they're exactly the same. They're 10, well, let's do it the other way around. The St. Paul's Cathedral, the dome is 10 times the size of those. So these were basically his practices. He had to go doing the dome here, liked the look of it, and then did a 10 times bigger version in St. Paul's Cathedral. Okay, I'm going to point you again to the website to have a look at the entry requirements for these, because they do vary. But basically, I'd encourage you to apply if you're interested. Okay, I was going to wind up just by saying something about criminology more generally. So this might be some of the reason why you're interested in criminology, some of these programs. I think The Wire is still the best myself, but I'm probably showing my age. What could you do after a criminology career, a criminology degree? Well, you could work in the criminal justice sector. So you could work for the police, the prisons, probation, courts. You could also work as a civilian for the police, or for probation, or with the prison, so on the educational side or something like that. You could also do postgraduate, so you could convert to law, forensics, psychology, or do a specialist criminology postgraduate. You could go into research internationally, nationally, locally, local government. They've got some really big research departments. The single largest employer of criminologists in the UK is the Home Office, but there's also criminologists employed at the Ministry of Justice, as you'd imagine. And internationally, the EU, the UN, there's lots of international bodies that need criminologists. And then the third sector, so charities, NGOs, advisors of various sorts. And these are the kind of jobs you might do. So criminal intelligence analyst, crime prevention officer, community safety officer, senior the crime officer, that's the picture down there at the bottom, victim support, youth work, drug action team, and the list goes on and on. Okay, those are our contact details. Yeah, so if you've got any questions, you can email me. My email has been on the slides, r.wild@gre.ac.uk, or the general email is law@gre.ac.uk. There's a final picture of the campus. So this is the painted hall, which used to be the canteen, basically, when this was a Royal Naval College. So that's the end of my presentation. I'm happy to take questions.
So I think we will wait with the questions, Richard, until the very end, since you are the professional here and I can't really answer the more criminology-specific questions. So I will start sharing my presentation about Griffith University. Så håper jeg at alle sammen ser den like bra som meg. Så det slik at jeg skal holde den presentasjonen for Griffith i og med at representanten derfra har blitt syk. Men jeg vil holde presentasjonen på engelsk, så hva greie mot meg hvis jeg snakker litt feil engelsk og så videre. So Griffith University is known for where the remarkable begins. Griffith believe in, strive for, and celebrate the remarkable in students, and they have a commitment to inclusion, diversity, social justice, and sustainability. And down here you see Chanel Baker's name. She was supposed to be here, so but she will be able to answer questions at a later point. If not, I have included the email address for another person at Griffith a little bit later in the slides. So Griffith is comprised of those 6 campuses. They have more than 50,000 students, whereas 8,500 of them are international students. This many students require a lot of staff, so they have more than 4,000 staff, and there has been more than 2,000 graduate students there, and they are a very international university with more than 130 nationalities. And at Griffith University, you can study more than 200 degrees. So Griffith is known for their excellent student satisfaction. They can provide, amongst others, airport pickup, world-class teachers, on-campus housing, and fantastic support services. It's becoming very dark, very cold here in the northern part of Europe, and whereas in Brisbane and in Gold Coast and in Queensland there is more than 300 days of sunshine a year, and in the winter there is no colder than 9 degrees and up to 21 degrees. It feels very unfair, especially because it's 2 degrees and very dark here in Oslo today. Gold Coast has a population of about 600,000. That's the same size as Oslo, whereas Brisbane, which is the next city, is 2.3 million people. It's easy to get around. You can go by bus, train, ferry, tram, and there is airports nearby. But if you're Norwegian, you're most likely going to walk or bike because we like to move our bodies. So the 6 campuses that you can find at Griffith University are Nathan, Mount Gravatt, Gold Coast, South Bank, Logan, and then they have a digital campus as well. You can study criminology at Mount Gravatt and Gold Coast. So here you see the Gold Coast campus. So as you see, you have the village accommodation nearby, the library, the aquatic center, there's a tram station not too far away, and in the background you can see Surfers Paradise where they have more student accommodation. So if you look at the high-rise buildings in the back, there are actually student housing back there. And it's only 60 kilometers away from Brisbane, which means there's not very far to go if you want to go to the whole big city experience. But as a Norwegian, I would like to say that the Gold Coast is most likely more than big enough. This is the Mount Gravatt and the Nathan campus. As you can see, it's right next to Brisbane, but it's in a little bit more quiet area than in the hustle and bustle of Brisbane itself. So I talked very, very briefly about the online campus. So because of Corona, and you want to start now in March, you have the alternative to start your studies online, as I already said, and then you can transfer over to face-to-face teaching later on. Griffith University has been doing digital studies for a very long time, so they're very good at what they're doing. So they have video demonstration, they record all lectures, you have self-assessment tutorials. If you need mentoring, you can get that. They also hire in guest lecturers to talk about different things that is interesting for you as a student. And they will accommodate as good as they can to help you thrive in your studies, even though you have to start far away, for instance, in Norway, before you go over to Australia. So I'm just going to show you some pictures really quickly to tempt you. So this is what Brisbane looks like. It looks very sunny and hot and very comfortable today. Some more beach pictures. It's kind of hard to show Australia without showing a beach. This is Surfers Paradise, as I talked about before. There's some student housing here. You can go surfing. There's beautiful canals you can kayak in. It's very easy to get around by bike or foot or tram in the city. Griffith University also have an aquatic center if you like swimming. They have beach volleyball. So when you're not going to classes, there's plenty of things to do. There are also some scholarships for Norwegian students or international students. They have 3 different levels. So there's either 20, 25, or 50% of the tuition fee, which is going to be a scholarship. It really depends on your grades, but Griffith really recommend all students to apply for scholarships to get the tuition as low as possible. And they know money is an issue, and because the prices usually go up every year a little bit, Griffith promised not to increase your fees more than 2.5% per year. They are the only university in Australia that promises this right now. You can also study abroad. So if you just want to do 1 semester or 2 semesters or 3 semesters, you can do that at Griffith, and criminology is a part of that. And you need to do 4 courses per semester to get financial support from Lånekassen. You can choose to stay on campus or off campus. Griffith will help you with applying for that. And for student life, this is the last slide before I go over to criminology, I promise. They have sport and fitness clubs. They have other societies. They can accommodate for different religion on campus. They have food and market days. There is also an orientation week. And for international students, there is a buddy week where you can meet other international students and you can meet local Australian students. So why study criminology at Griffith University? Griffith University is the oldest and biggest criminology school in Australia, and they have a large community for criminology and criminal justice scholars. You will benefit from the industry-informed learning and gain valuable experience while working on real cases with real clients during your studies. So the criminology, they are working really closely with law for obvious reasons. And they are also working at the Griffith University Innocence Project, where they help people in prison that are there, even though they didn't do what the government has said they've done. And they will do it pro bono, so they will do it completely free to help them get out. So Australia's largest criminology school will give you more opportunities than a much smaller school, especially in Australia. So this means that you'll get more courses, more student opportunities. There is definitely more study abroad connections. The Criminology Society is massive, and you have so many options for placements. There are more than 40 criminology and criminal justice courses and more than 100 free choice electives as a part of your degree. There's also strong connections because of the industry advisory board, and they are helping them shape the degree. So it's very industry relevant in Australia. All right, we're gonna look at a very short film. I hope it works.
A highlight at Griffith for me was definitely being able to go on one of the prison tours. It's a very rare experience for criminology students in general, but Griffith somehow managed to have those connections to make it happen.
So I found Griffith really helped me directly in getting my job because I did our 3008 CCJ, which was our professional practice. So I was placed at Ethical Standards Command at the Queensland Police. And then 2 months after I finished placement, I was offered a job. Really, Griffith directly helped me to get that job because if it wasn't for placement, I would have met my supervisors, I wouldn't have met the officer who gave me the job, and I don't think I'd have the skills that I have, that I use now even, in my job if it wasn't for Griffith.
So my experience through Griffith was very rewarding. I definitely learnt a lot throughout the degree. I came into the degree wanting to be a police officer, but once I finished, I knew that there are a lot more opportunities other than policing with the Bachelor of Criminology and Criminal Justice.
Griffith staff really go out of their way to help students get the most they can out of their degree.
If you are having issues with a certain subject, or you even have suggestions on what sort of research you'd like to do on the topic, anything like that, show your interest to your academics. They will always be there to help you.
I actually picked criminology. I had just finished my Diploma of Justice Administration, and it was a foot in the door to do the undergrad for criminology. So I thought I'd read more about the subject, found out that criminology had a lot of opportunities. I definitely wouldn't have gotten to where I am today if it wasn't for this degree.
If you asked me what criminology was this time 4 years ago, I probably would have said it's what you need to do to get into like NCIS or something like that, and it's totally not the case.
You get to actually know the background of why people offend, you get to learn how to help treat people, you kind of get to learn about every aspect of the criminal justice system, not just what you're seeing on TV. So I think if that's something that interests you, definitely check out Griffith's subjects, and I would definitely recommend the program.
Skal vi se, da jeg håper at alle hørte den filmen ganske bra. Having Australia's largest criminology school on campus and one of the largest globally, this means to students that you will have a much wider range of courses and electives than at a smaller school. You will also get more student opportunities. Again, I already mentioned study abroad connections and the society and the placement opportunities, but I don't think you can talk too much about that because it's such a big part of the degree. It also gives you the flexibility to tailor your course so it suits you and your interests. And you can choose really cutting-edge electives like homicide, offender profiling, forensics and justice, criminal analysis and investigation, fraud and cybercrime, and counterterrorism. So, Griffith are rated as well above the world standard by Excellence in Research Committee, which means that you as a student will learn from the best academics in the world in the field of research. Griffith academics come from a variety of different fields, such as they are lawyers, psychologists, they are police officers. And this leads to really high student satisfaction just because the lecturers are so good at what they're doing. Griffith are leading, and the academics also come from around the world. So you will not only have Australian lecturers, but you will have lecturers from India, from China, from Europe. So you will get a lot of different perspectives on criminology in the world. In 2014, Australia hosted the G20, and 2 of their international criminology students received an award for the contribution they did to the summit. So they sent in a thesis, I believe, which was highly applauded by all the G20 countries. And they also entered the volunteer and policing program during the G20, and they helped out making sure everything was safe and secure for the participating countries. So, if you study criminology at Griffith University, they focus on employability. In other words, how likely are you to get a job after studying at Griffith University? So not only do they offer cutting-edge courses such as counterterrorism, fraud and cybercrime, media and crime, but you can also do dual degrees. And the most popular thing is actually a Thailand study tour. So you go 2 weeks to Thailand, focusing on issues around human trafficking, women's imprisonment, human trafficking, human rights. You will have field trips to Thai prisons. You will look at drug rehab centers. You will look into how domestic violence is affecting people in Thailand compared to Australia, and you will participate in ex-inmate skill development centers. So it's a very hands-on approach to criminology. Again, the Industry Advisory Board will make sure that your degree is suited for a job in Australia or the UK after. Norway is a slightly different thing because we're not a part of the Commonwealth, but I will talk about that a little bit more later. And here you can see the Criminology Student Society and some of the things they're doing. So they have prison tours, they go to the police academy, they have a ball, they even have a little dog squad. And they do escape rooms, and they do a lot of fun things that criminology students find extra funny. So the most straightforward criminology degree at Griffith University is the Bachelor of Criminology and Criminal Justice. It's offered at Mount Gravatt and Gold Coast campus. You can do it for 3 years, or you can do a dual degree. It's very popular to combine it with law, psychological science, human services, forensic science, information technology, or international relations. All of these will make your degree 4 years, except for law, which will make it 5 years. So this will mean that you will get 2 bachelor's degrees instead of 1 bachelor's degree. And it's very flexible. So if you start on the 3-year degree and decide, ooh, I want to do psychological science at the same time, well, then you can just change, and then you will do it over 4 years. Or if you start on a dual degree and you decide, oh, I'm not sure if this is for me, then you can just let the university know, and then you will just pop back into the normal criminology track, and then you will finish in 3 years. So they're very, very flexible on that part. So the normal program structure for criminology at Griffith is that 12 out of the 24 courses are core courses. That means they're mandatory. First year is fixed foundation courses, so introductory courses in criminology, and it also includes some courses in sociology, psychology, and some in research. Second and third year, you will have some choice, and all the electives are grouped in different themes, so you can specialize in what you find the most interesting, such as correction, policing, policy, research, or youth justice. Studying criminology at Griffith will teach you how to understand crime. You will not become a detective in Australia or a police officer in Australia by studying criminology, but you will understand why crime happened from a sociological, psychological, biological, and evolutionary perspective. It's also a broad-based social science degree that will lead so many places. I think I popped by this quickly before. Some of the popular subjects are homicide, forensic psychology, crime analysis and investigation, fraud and cybercrime, counterterrorism law, and rehabilitating offenders. So it's really easy to specialize in what you want to do. So what can a criminology degree from Griffith take you? So I have listed here some of the most popular and common careers for Griffith graduates. With a degree in criminology, you are sought after within a wide range of fields. Most graduates end up in Australia or in the UK, but many international students also go back to their home countries and get really good jobs there. So as you see from the list, criminology does not limit your options. It rather opens doors for you and giving you opportunity most people don't think as a possible outcome of a criminology degree. So this is the last slide about Griffith University. You can look at that link. I will also send that link to you on email. Så tilbake til norsk. Hva kan du faktisk bruke en kriminologigrad til i Norge? Så de færreste som er utdannet kriminologer har stillingstitten kriminolog i Norge. Det er normalt at i løpet av studiet så spesialiserer du deg, enten innen et felt eller innen flere felt. Det er veldig vanlig å spesialisere seg innen narkotikakontroll, vold, rus, gjengkriminalitet, psykiatri og straff og rehabilitering. Arbeidsoppgavene varierer jo mye fra arbeidsplass til arbeidsplass. Så hvis du har sett deg ut en arbeidsplass du synes er spesielt spennende, så kan det være lurt at du ringer dit og så spør du hva ser du etter i en fremtidig ansatt. Har du ikke sett deg ut noen spesifikk arbeidsplass, så er ikke det noe problem. Da har du like mange muligheter etterpå. De vanligste yrkene hvis du søker det opp for en kriminolog er rådgiver, konsulent og saksbehandler. Dette er vanlige stillingsnavn for de som jobber i det offentlige, og det sier faktisk veldig lite om hva du gjør. Men jeg har prøvd å liste opp litt hva du kan gjøre etter studiene dine som faller innunder disse arbeidstitlene her. Så du kan for eksempel drive med forskning. Hvorfor blir noen kriminelle? Eller så kan du drive med prosjektarbeid, for eksempel senke ungdomskriminaliteten i en kommune, eller forhindre at innsatte begår nye lovbrudd etter løslatelse. Eventuelt så kan man jobbe innenfor helse og omsorg, da spesielt innen kriminalomsorgen eller rusproblematikk. De aller fleste som har studert kriminologi finner seg en jobb innen det offentlige. Allerede under studiene så begynner man å tenke seg litt hvilken retning man vil gå i, og mange tenker da gjerne kriminalomsorgen, i kriminalomsorgen, sosialsektoren eller i politiet. Da må du jobbe sivilt i politiet, du kan ikke jobbe som politi i Norge. Det finnes også stillinger for kriminologer i ideelle organisasjoner, slik som Kirkens Bymisjon eller Røde Kors. Andre alternativer kan jo også være for eksempel krisesentre eller konfliktrådet. Men det viktigste du får ut av å studere kriminologi er faktisk en utdanning. Det gir deg mye større muligheter enn hva jeg snakket om både her og under foredrag til Griffith, og hva Richard har snakket om under sitt foredrag. En utdanning gir deg ikke lenger et yrke slik som det var når foreldrene dine studerte. En utdanning gir deg kunnskap om hvordan sette sammen informasjon. Den gir deg også fleksibilitet og evnen til å omstille deg. Det er en egenskap som er veldig høyt verdsatt i dagens dynamiske arbeidsmarked. Ikke minst gir en utdanning deg evnen til å lære ny kunnskap. Uansett hvor banalt det høres ut, så er det faktisk ganske viktig. Så selv om Norge i dag ikke lenger er et samfunn hvor vår hovednæring er fysisk arbeid, men heller kunnskap, så må du jo enten se for deg en jobb bak en datamaskin, eller å arbeide direkte med mennesker. Så det er viktig å trene hjernen mens du fortsatt kan det, og det er jo det en utdanning er til. Og da har vi faktisk kommet så langt at vi har kommet oss til spørsmålsdelen. Nå har jeg listet opp e-postadressene våre her. Ved Griffith University så har jeg listet opp Natasha Abreos e-postadresse. Det er hun som jobber med Europa. For Griffith University så har jeg listet opp Tom Cuffer, som er da Regional Manager. Skal vi se. Richard, do you want to unmute? Let's see.
Yeah.
So I actually
I
got
think
quite a
I've
few
managed.
questions.
Oh, okay.
So
Lovely presentation. I'm off to Griffith. So,
I think the beach and the sun did that.
look, it's dark and cold outside here. So
Yeah.
yeah. Do you want to? Are you going to ask the questions and then I'll?
I will give you the question and then you can answer, because I think you're way better than me to answer those kind of questions.
And you're way better at reading Norwegian, I'm guessing.
All other questions are in English.
Oh.
So, question number 1. Is criminology the right choice if I want to work with getting prisoners back to society, rehabilitation, criminal care, etc.? Or will a bachelor in social work give me the same opportunities?
Right, interesting question. I think they probably give you the same, well, different opportunities, but they would both be fine. Yeah. I think that criminology is basically a social science degree. Yeah, it's a specialist social science degree. So it will give you a lot of the opportunities that doing any of the other applied social science degrees would give you. But at least in the UK, social work and probation and youth work are kind of postgraduate specialisms. Yeah. So what you would do is you do an undergraduate degree like sociology, psychology, or criminology, and then you do a postgraduate specialist. If those are 2 undergraduate degrees, then I would say either of them would be fine for working in those sorts of areas.
Perfect. Is math a relevant subject to study criminology?
Yeah, definitely. Because there are kind of, I don't agree with this, but there are basically 2 kind of research approaches, quantitative and qualitative. I mean, I think that actually you need to do both, but quantitative are basically numerically based approaches and qualitative are language, word based. Yeah. So certainly if you're doing our BSc criminology and criminal psychology, it would be well, it's a requirement to have high school level maths, and it would be an advantage to have even higher level, because the psychology parts of it are quite often based on quantitative and experimental forms of data, and there to be able to read a table or a graph without panicking is a help.
Next question. What is the difference between criminal psychology and criminology?
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like I don't know, a kind of basic question, but actually they're very different. Yeah, but they tend to be used synonymously, so they tend to be used interchangeably. But actually, criminal psychology is a specialist form of psychology. Yeah. And criminology is a discipline in itself. Yeah. So criminal psychology can be part of criminology, but criminology isn't part of criminal psychology. It's probably the easiest way to think about it. But if I can just kind of expand slightly and maybe confuse you a bit, there's also a variety of different specialist forms of psychology that are relevant to criminology. The most obvious ones are forensic, investigative, and criminal psychology. Yeah. Quite often, I think people think that criminal psychology is criminology. Yeah, that's all it is. So quite often people, when they hear I'm a criminologist, they say, okay, so what case are you working on, or have you, when have you been working with the police, or do you deal with murder? And no, I mean, I don't really like crime. Blood or anything, and I luckily don't have to work with any of that. The forensic is legally applied psychology. Criminal is any psychology applied to crime and criminals. And investigative is psychology applied around investigation and interrogation. Yeah, those are all specialist forms of psychology, but they're all covered by criminology. But so is a whole lot of other things like sociology, social policy, law, economics, etc.
Wonderful. Let's see. What is the difference between criminology, psychology, and sociology?
Right. Oh, that's
Tricky
okay.
questions tonight.
That's a slightly easier one because that's a bit more basic. Yeah, they're kind of, these are big disciplines, big disciplinary questions. So with my kind of critical hat on, I would say actually there's a lot of overlap. But actually, so remind me, sociology, criminology, and the third one was?
Psychology.
Oh, psychology. Okay. All right. No, that's quite straightforward. So the easiest way is to break the word down. Yeah. So psychology, sociology, and criminology. The ology bit is the study and science of. Yeah. The psych bit is the brain. Yeah. So it's what happens inside the person, whereas sociology is society, is the social, i.e. what happens outside of the person. So it's everything from two people up to societies. And then criminology is actually, it's a slightly different thing because it's not about a perspective, it's about a subject focus. So it's anything to do with crime, criminals, victims, criminal justice. Yeah, so that's why we get a lot of my colleagues come from sociology backgrounds or psychology backgrounds. A head of department is a psychologist. We've got geographers. We've got all kinds of people working in the department. Why? Because their interests are around crime, criminology, criminals, etc.
So there's a question for me. Is there any other universities beside Griffith University in Australia you can study criminology? Yes. So we in Sonar, we work with 9 universities in Australia where you can study criminology. So you have Bond University, you have Griffith University, which are both in Gold Coast in Queensland. We have James Cook University in Townsville and Cairns, which is also in Queensland. We have La Trobe University and University of Melbourne in Melbourne, Victoria. We have University of Western Australia in Perth, which is Western Australia. We have University of Wollongong in New South Wales, and we have UNSW in Sydney, which is also New South Wales. Last question that just came in. Which specialization do you recommend to take with criminology?
You'll need to explain the question. Is that
So
like a dual degree?
I think the question is more of a dual degree.
Yeah. Okay. Wow. I mean, tricky because I think criminology is quite enough to study by itself, really. So if you're combining it with another, I mean, I think I said a long time ago, I did a dual degree, so I did psychology and sociology, and I don't think it's a great idea myself because you end up, it's only, at least in the UK, it's only a 3-year degree. Yeah, so 3 years is not a long time to study something, and it's really important to kind of get the basics. So if you're trying to do that across 2 subjects, it's quite tough. But if you do want to do that, which ones? I guess the natural partners are probably sociology and psychology. We've tried in the past to offer a law and criminology degree, but it's never quite worked for the kind of reasons I explained, which is that that people want a qualifying law degree, so they want to do all of the law, and then they find the criminology really interesting, and so want to do more and more criminology, and you can't fit 2 litres into a 1 litre pot. So they just feel a bit frustrated, students on that program. They felt frustrated they didn't get as much law as they wanted, but equally they didn't manage to do as much criminology as they wanted. So we ended up dropping that as an option.
All right, I don't think there's any more questions. Is there something you want to talk about in the end?
Yeah, if I can, that's all right. I mean, a couple of things. I've just, while you were talking, sorry, I should have concentrated, but I was distracted to contact one of our former Norwegian students who I've not been in touch with, and giving this talk reminded me to check how she's doing, because she last I heard before coronavirus, she took up a post as a probation officer up in the very north near Hammerfest. And I was a bit worried, you know, how she's getting on there. Anyway, she replied straight away to me. So I thought I'd share a bit of that, because she joined us a year when we had 5 Norwegian students all arrived at the same time. They had a little bit of a community, and then she went off in her second year to Malta. We have an Erasmus exchange with the University of Malta. So she spent a year in Malta, and I visited her out there. Almost as nice as Griffith, I think, in terms of sunshine. Maybe not the beaches. And she also says, in her reply now, I didn't realise, she said Sonos helped me a lot when I was applying for the University of Greenwich. So it's really helpful to, so she's happy to give any advice if anyone wants. So it did occur to me, if people are interested, they can look me up on LinkedIn, because I've got a kind of graduate network there. So a lot of our graduates join me on LinkedIn. So if you're interested in what kind of things our students go on to do, you can go on there and just kind of spy on my network of LinkedIn students and read off what kind of jobs they're doing. And if you're really brave, you could send them a message and say, you know, that sounds interesting. How did you get into that job? So I'm very happy for you to do that. The other thing I thought I'd say is I noticed when I looked for this talk that actually it had a subtitle, Criminology, Punishment or Rehabilitation. And I realized that I haven't answered that question. So I thought maybe I'd try and answer that question, if you like.
Yes, please.
And remember, I said I'm a critical criminologist, so you won't get the same answer from all criminologists. But I would say that punishment is entirely pointless without rehabilitation. So that's quite easy to answer. And in fact, I think I disagree with punishment in principle, yeah, because punishment, if you think about what punishment is causing pain, yeah, and we're taught from a very young age that causing pain is not a good thing to do to anyone. So why, as a society and as a state, we think that that's okay? The most extreme example would be the death penalty. Actually, it degrades all of us, I think, to punish and to have state-sanctioned murder, i.e. the death penalty. But then I think more practically, so that's a kind of moral and principled argument, but I think more practically, it doesn't work. So if you look at the research evidence around deterrence, for example, so there's quite often this view that you should just increase the punishment, yeah, make it more painful, and that will deter more people. Well, that's complete nonsense. Actually, it has, even if it's done really carefully, it has only a moderate deterrent effect. There are much better things you can do if you want to stop people committing crime, and that's why I do criminology, because I'm interested in stopping future victims, yeah, and looking at why people commit crime. So the emphasis really needs to be around rehabilitation, and better still, prevention, so that we don't have to do rehabilitation or punishment, because there are less criminals.
That's a wonderful answer. Thank you. So one very, very last minute question. Can you study criminology straight out of high school?
Yes, you can.
Yes, you can.
Yeah.
Wonderful question.
You didn't used to be able to, so I didn't. I couldn't. I'm that old that criminology didn't exist when I left high school. So that's why I did sociology and psychology. It only existed as a postgraduate. But the first undergraduate degree in the UK in criminology started in 1991, where I used to work at Keele University. And now I think pretty much all of the 148 universities in the UK offer criminology in some form or other. So it's really expanded in the last 25 years as a subject. But now you can do criminology degrees, you know, in Australia, in the UK. I think about Norway. Yeah, I'm sure. Well, Oslo. No, I know a group in Oslo. So.
You can study at University of Oslo, but that's the only university that offer it in Norway.
Right.
Yeah. So there's no more questions right now, so I would like to say thank you very much, Richard, for participating tonight. It was lovely to listen to your little talk. Til alle dere som fortsatt til stede, tusen takk for at dere deltok. Dere vil få en e-post fra den som veilederen deres i morgen. Har dere noen spørsmål, så vil dere få tilsendt e-postadressen min, e-postadressen til universitetene, direkte i den e-posten. Har dere noen spørsmål, så det bare å stille spørsmål i vei. Vi her for å hjelpe dere. Vi hjelper dere med å søke. Så her det ingen grunn til å ikke ta kontakt etterpå. Så tusen takk for i kveld, og så sier vi ha det bra.
Everyone.